Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the Generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Also, just so you know, there will be a third game every week in December on each Saturday of the month. This is just my little way of saying thanks for enjoying my content. Hey gang, looking to get your hands on a free box of Theros Beyond Death? Well, look no further. Flipside Gaming will be giving one away between December 12th and January 27th. You can enter by using my promo code MTGMudsta on an order of $10 or more, or by sending a self-addressed, stamped envelope or postcard to them. It's one entry per person, and for more information, follow the link below. Hopefully everyone was able to catch the stream last Friday, and if you haven't, I'm sure it's already up on YouTube. We'll probably be streaming again in the new year, so look forward for me announcing dates of when that'll happen. In today's game, we have a rare occurrence of 4 monocolored decks that don't share a color. I am playing Titania, keeping 3 snow-covered forests, Wooded Foothills, Nissa Vital Force, Elemental Bond, and Sylvan Library. Max is playing Nezahal, keeping an island, Nykthos, Drownyard Temple, Wasteland, Wonder, Phyrexian Jester, and Leyline of Anticipation. Martin is playing his Kumano deck, keeping a Humble Defector, 2 Mountains, Mana Geyser, Staff of Nin, Faithless Looting, and Glaring Spotlight. Last but not least, Ben is playing Syr Konrad, keeping 4 Swamps, Memorial of Folly, Grimoire of the Dead, and Westvale Abbey. I win the die roll and start us off. I play a Snow-Covered Forest and pass. Martin draws, and Max remembers how a leyline works. Martin then plays a mountain, and casts his ironically slightly glaring Spotlight. Max plays an island. Ben plays a swamp. I play a snow-covered forest, and pay 2 for Sylvan Library. Martin plays a mountain, and casts his Humble Defector. Max plays a wasteland. Ben plays another swamp. I play a snow-covered forest, and cast a Zuza. I only have 1 extra land to play, and having forgotten to use my library trigger, simply play a Wooded Foothills and pass. Martin plays a tap Valakut, and I crack my Wooded Foothills. He then plays a Illusionist Bracers, and passes. Max, in no rush since every turn is his turn, plays a Nykthos, and passes. Ben plays a Westvale Abbey, passing. I remember my library trigger, and take 8 to keep them all. I then play a snow-covered forest and a Tectonic Edge, before casting Elemental Bond. I then cast Nissa's Pilgrimage, not having Spell Mastery sadly, and only find 2 more snow-covered forests. I then play 1 and pass. Martin plays a mountain and equips his bracers onto the Humble Defector. He draws 4 and passes a Defector to Ben, and then casts a Wayfarer's Bauble before passing. Max plays a tap Thawing Glaciers and passes. At the end of turn, Martin tells Ben he can give the Defector to anyone as long as it's not me. Ben plays a Swamp and activates the Defector, drawing 4 and passes it back to Martin. He then casts Grimoire of the Dead and passes. I use my library trigger, taking 4 to keep an extra card. And I play a Snow-Covered Forest before paying 5 mana for Nissa Vital Force. I uptick my Walker to animate a land, and pass turn. Martin draws, and taps his Defector, drawing 4 again. He gives it back to Ben, and plays a mountain. Martin then casts Soul Ring, and then a Basilisk Collar. He uses Faithless Looting to draw 2, and then discard 2. Martin then plays out the Duke of Dumpsters to ready, and down ticks the Walker, swapping his Spotlight for a Staff of Nin. Max plays a Drownyard Temple, passing. Ben untaps and draws 4 more. Ben then plays out a Swamp, and he casts a Jet Medallion, and then Liliana's Reaver. He passes to me, but at the end of turn, Martin pings down Nissa with the Staff of Nin. I use my library trigger, putting 2 back, and cast a Wayward Swordtooth, drawing as it enters from the Bond trigger. I play out a command beacon and Inventor's Fair, and then uptick Nissa. I animate a land and swing it to ready. I then cast Titania, bringing back my Wooded Foothills, and draw as she enters. At the end of turn, Max, like a good player, flashes in a Thought Sponge and puts 5 counters onto it. Martin draws from the staff and for turn, and pays 4 for Fires of Invention. He then moves the Caller onto the Defector, and casts Chandra's Ignition. This has the Defector hitting everything with Death Touch and Lifelink, and he gains 2 life 9 times for a total of 18 while simultaneously wiping the board. With Max's Sponge dying, he gets to draw 6 cards, and Martin then passes. Max plays a Temple of False God, and moves to his end step, discarding down to 7. One of those cards is Wonder. Ben plays another Swamp, which isn't much of a surprise, and brings in his commander, Syr Konrad. Responding to it, I sacrifice my Wooded Foothills and cast Realm Uncharted, but Max negates it. I still get to go and find a snow-covered forest as a consolation prize. Ben then casts Liliana the Last Hope, and he downticks her, milling 2, and returns his Reaver to his hand. And with Syr Konrad seeing this nonsense, it deals 1 damage to all of Ben's opponents. I use my library trigger, and Martin pings Nissa. I don't keep any extras, and I recast Titania, drawing as she enters, and returning my Wooded Foothills. I then cast a Courser of Crewfix, which I'd sadly drawn from Titania entering, and uptick Nissa once more to animate a land. I swing that land at Ben, who takes the hit. Martin draws his 2, and plays a mountain. This triggers his now active Valakut, dealing 3 to Nissa. Martin then brings out his commander, Kumano, and then casts a Mana Geyser, gaining 17 red mana. He moves both the Collar and the Bracers to his commander, and Martin then starts blasting away with Kumano, dealing with my Titania, Syr Konrad, then my Courser, and my land, and then finishing off Liliana and doing 1 to Nissa. He's gained life for each ping, and Martin then taps his Defector to draw 2 and gives it to Max. Martin then passes, and Max uses Thawing Glaciers at the end of turn to find a basic and return it to his hand. Max plays an island and taps the Defector to draw 2 and gives it back to Martin. He then plays out Mind's Dilation, which is just great. Max then discards his Thawing Glaciers, and I find a basic with my Wooded Foothills. Ben plays a Rogue's Passage and casts Mimic Vat. He reveals and exiles Endless Whispers to the Mind's Dilation trigger, which I'm surprised to see in anything other than Phage, but I can see how it would work well in Konrad. Ben then plays his Lightning Greaves and passes. I use my library, keeping only 1 from the 3. I then sacrifice my Command Beacon to put Titania back into my hand, and recast her. I exile Natural Affinity off the top, which Max also leaves in exile. She then enters and returns my Command Beacon and draws me a card. I then put to stack Nissa, who shakes the world, and Martin responds while she's on the stack by pinging Titania with Kumano and gains 1 life. I then uptick my Nissas back to back, with Max helping me out by marking which land is which. Heading to combat, I hit Max for 3 with my Vigilance land, and then in my post-combat main phase, tap both lands to cast Greater Good. Martin in turn pings both lands while the spell is on the stack, and they're exiled along with basically the rest of the creatures I played this game. I pass, and Martin pings the bigger Nissa 3 times. Martin plays a land and blasts Big Nissa for her remaining loyalty counters. He then casts Godo, which has him revealing Syr Konrad, and Max finally casts a spell from Mind's Dilation. Martin then goes and finds Hammer of Nezahal, putting it to the field. He targets Kumano with the Hammer's attached trigger, but Ben uses Price of Fame to take up the legendary. Ben then surveils 2 and bins both. Martin then replays his commander, paying the 2 commander attacks needed to cast it, and then moves the hammer, followed by the collar to him again. Martin then taps the Defector to draw 2, and finally gives it to me before passing. Max plays a Reliquary Tower, passing. At the end of turn, Ben activates his Grimoire and discards an Artisan of Kozilek. Ben recasts the Liliana's Reaver and exiles a Vengeful Dead, which Max also casts. Ben then puts the Greaves onto the Reaver and swings it at me. I take the hit and have to discard a card while Ben gains a zombie token. Ben then casts Victimize in his post-combat main phase, sacrificing the zombie token to return his Artisan of Kozilek and Dreamstealer tapped. Ben also realizes that the Vengeful Dead would have triggered, and all of Max's opponents lose 1 as Ben passes turn. I use my Library's ability, keeping 1 and playing it, a Blighted Woodland. I then draw the 2 I put back by tapping Martin's Defector and give it to Ben. And then animate a land with Nissa. I sacrifice it to Greater Good to draw 5 and discard 3. I then crack the Blighted Woodland to find 2 more basics that Martin seems to find a way to keep killing, and put to stack a Splendid Reclamation. This has me revealing a Court of Calling to the Mind Stylation. Max cast it with 0 in the X for a shuffle effect, and I bring back a few lands tapped. I pass, and at the end of turn, Martin pings the Defector with Kumano, killing it and gaining some life. He then also pings Nissa with his staff. Martin draws his 2 and plays a Caged Sun, exiling a Loxodon Warhammer which Max steals. Max then uses Sudden Substitution, swapping a stolen Vengeful Dead for a now stolen Caged Sun. The Sun comes in, and Max names Blue. Martin then plays a Heartstone, and with the artifact on the stack, Max activates Nykthos to help cast a Phyrexian Ingester, who comes in and targets Kumano for exile. Martin responds to this by tapping some mana to activate Kumano and ping balls most of the remaining creatures on the board. However, before letting those resolve, Max taps Syr Konrad to deal 1 to Martin. He then exiles a Lonely Sandbar off the top of his library. The creatures are then removed and put into exile, and Kumano is then exiled, with finally the Heartstone then resolving, and Martin finishes off my second Nissa. Martin then equips Godo with the hammer, and passes. Max draws and passes. At the end of turn, Ben activates the Grimoire again, discarding a card. Ben plays a Swamp and heads to combat, and swings the Reaver at Max. In what feels like a very one-sided deal, Max takes the hit and discards a card, while Ben gains a zombie token. Ben then recasts his commander. With his commander resolving, Ben then tries to move the Greaves onto Konrad, but Max uses Rapid Hybridization. Before letting him get destroyed though, Ben activates his commander, and we all mill our top cards. None of them are creatures, and Ben then puts Syr Konrad to the yard, and he passes turn. I use my library again, keeping the card I want, and crack my command beacon to bring Titania back to my hand. I cast her, and Max steals my Gaia's Touch this time, while she draws me a card after entering and returning the command beacon to the field. I then cast Life's Legacy, sacrificing Titania, and drawing 5 cards. I then sacrifice the command beacon again, bringing Titania back to my hand and recasting her, which in turn brings back the command beacon and drawing from the Elemental Bond. I then lose 1 life to crack the Wooded Foothills, getting a 5/3 Elemental token, and go to find a forest. I then pay 4 to cast Natural Order, sacrificing Titania. I go and find a green creature, putting Woodland Bellower onto the field, and layering my draw to happen before the search. I then go and find Reclamation Sage, and target Basilisk Collar, which has been a huge pain in my butt. I pass, and at the end of turn, Martin pings Max for 1. Martin draws his 2, and recasts his commander, paying the commander tax. This has him exile a Gilded Lotus, which Max takes. Martin then puts the Bracers onto Kumano, and then plays Angrass Marauders. Heading to combat, he swings Godo at Ben for 10. Ben takes the hit, and Martin then untaps Godo, and moves through his extra combat step. Martin then passes, and at the end of turn, Max flashes in Nezahal. With the dinosaur hanging out in limbo, I use Nature's Claim to try and blow up Caged Sun, and I then exile Ramunap Excavator, which Max steals. Max then responds, and uses Spelljack to literally jack my spell. With Nezahal having resolved, Martin then activates Kumano twice, which gives him 4 triggers, we now realize because of the bracers. This would have been good to know several turns before. And each of these has its damage doubled. He puts all of the triggers on Nezahal to deal 8 damage and take out the commander. Max draws and recasts his commander pretty easily in his main phase, which might actually be the first time he's cast something in his own turn this game. He then passes, and at the end of turn, Ben activates his Grimoire to discard Erebos and put another counter on it. Ben draws and plays a Swamp. He wants to go for the Grimoire play, but Max currently has a Crederic Leviathan in his yard, which kinda makes that plan bad. He can't even make his Reaver unblockable with the Rogue's Passage because of the Lightning Greaves, and Ben passes. At the end of turn, I sacrifice my Bellower to draw 6 and discard 3. Ben decides to put the Bellower under his Mimic Vat. I use my Library trigger and keep 1, casting Asceticism and exiling Glacial Chasm to Mind's Dilation trigger. I then use a Krosan Grip to blow up the Caged Sun. I crack my Command Beacon, putting my commander to hand, cast her, and put her back onto the field, and put it back onto the field, and then draw a card. Unfortunately, I played this out too quickly, and we rewind a bit so that Max can draw a card from Nezahal seeing the Asceticism. Martin responds to the Nezahal trigger by activating Kumano, and putting all the triggers on Nezahal, and with the last one on the stack, Max flashes in Venser to bounce the Marauders. Martin responds as Venser's ETB hits the stack, and taps his Staff of Nin to deal the final 2 damage he might need for Nezahal. This then all happens, and Max draws a card. And I then sacrifice my commander to draw 5 and discard 3. I then play out a turn Timber Sower, and pass turn. Martin draws his 2 and recasts his Marauder in his main phase. This has him exiling Braids of Fire, which Max takes. Martin's second spell then is a Gratuitous Violence, ouch. If this resolves, it means that each of Martin's now 1 costing activations from Kumano now deals 4 damage, and with the bracers, means he gets 2 of those triggers for a total of 8 damage per mana. This makes Lightning Bolt look like a joke, and thankfully Max sacrifices the touch and taps 2 blue for a summary dismissal. Moving to combat, the Vengeful Dead swings at its former master, and Ben blocks with a zombie token. With both zombies dying, Martin's opponents each lose 4 life. Martin then uses a Staff of Nin to take out Venser, and activates his commander to take out and exile my Excavator. He then passes, discarding down to 7. Max gains 1 red on his upkeep with the Braids of Fire, and then delves away most of his graveyard for a Treasure Cruise, exiling away most of his creatures to draw the 3. He plays a Myriad Landscape and passes. At the end of turn, Ben activates his Grimoire to basically get a free Rise of the Dark Realms. Martin wants to see what Ben will get, and with the Harsh Mentor turning itself against Martin if the ability resolves, Martin decides to tap the 5 mountains needed to take Ben out. We move through Ben's turn to mine, and on my upkeep, Martin still has enough mana to finish me off as well. Max decides to flash in a Morph creature, and using the special action of Morphing, flips it face up for a Chrome Shell Crab. He targets Kumano with the trade trigger, but Martin has his commander do enough damage to put himself back into the command zone. Martin untaps for his turn and draws his 2. He then recasts his commander, paying the commander tax, and he exiles a land to Max's Mind's Dilation. Still responding to the commander being on the stack, Max uses his Wasteland to take out Martin's Valakut. Martin then casts an Ember Maw Hellion as his second spell for turn, which is pretty much game over for Max once it resolves. It means that Kumano is really most likely going to be doing 5 or 6 damage per red mana, which is pretty nutty, and Martin then moves the bracers onto his commander. Martin then activates him once, putting one of the triggers onto the crab, and the other on Max. And with really nothing to be able to stop this, Max realizes he doesn't have a good enough answer, and concedes. Game review time. I think my game started off pretty well, but unfortunately as soon as Martin was able to resolve a Basilisk Collar in his commander, my creatures were easy pickings. There was really no easy way for me to attack Martin, so I committed myself to finding Asceticism as quickly as I could. And as you saw, it wasn't very quickly. I think Martin made the right move taking out Ben when he did, because with Syr Konrad on the field and the Grimoire resolving, I'm pretty sure most of us would have been dead at the table, with Martin severely hurt. Max was doing a great job of just flying under the radar and playing a land in passing. He had no pressure to have to play on his turn thanks to the ley line, and he was able to do a lot of disruptive stuff, which is what a blue deck wants to do anyway. I think this is my first time ever seeing a Kumano deck, and it seemed to play like a really good control deck. Fires of Invention certainly impressed me, and by the time that I was able to find some way to deal with artifacts or enchantments, I think I may have made the wrong choice pulling the Basilisk Collar up. Martin was saving so much mana from the fires that it effectively felt like he was having 2 or 3 times the mana that he did. I was really envious of his commander once he had all the pieces attached to him and was basically able to pay 1 red to deal almost 8 damage per activation. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.